Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about 10x developers. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, how do 10x software engineers elevate their teams? Well, usually they provide support. Classic one, like the normal, like I don't know what X that makes you, but usually it is that they are domain experts or something like that. They know a lot of stuff about the system or where to get support or things like that, so they can answer questions and stuff like that. And the reason why I call them an I don't know if it is a 10xer, but it's an xer of some sort, is because if you can count the amount of time it takes a average software developer to figure out how to find all, in some cases it's basically impossible. Where is all the documentation? How do I do this? How do I get access to that, etc., etc. A lot of waiting and like lead time happens in these moments where you don't really know where to find what you need or things like that, or how to do something or debug something. So those unsung heroes that know all the things about the system, make sure that you're extra nice to them, because they are at least as important as the quote theoretically super talented 10xers. But that's one type of thing that they do to elevate their team, their domain knowledge. Then you have other things like depending on how you want to look at it. So the thing that I usually say is that it's very rare that you find a software developer that is so good that they can just code faster. Usually the thing that a 10xer does, the real 10xers, is that they're very, very talented at creating well working and scalable solutions to the core problems of the system. Basically, they are the sort of people who can figure out that, well, these are our core features, and if I create this abstraction, or I structure the code like that, or I add this work process or this thing here, basically we're going to be able to ship faster, or basically it's going to simplify the work so we don't have to do as much of this stuff, etc., etc. This is very difficult to do, guys. This is what the philosopher programmers are trying to learn how to do, but it takes a lot of practice to do this well, because trust me, there are more some X or wannabe 10xers who fuck things up and make it actually worse than there are 10xers who actually do it well. But that's basically what they do. They create solutions, and it doesn't just have to be technical solutions. I mean, it's always nice to have like a good abstraction for something, or a library that somebody created, or a helper function that does something, right? But it's just as important to have, like, if you talk about one of the most common things that happens is fear of release. Basically, people are scared of doing deployments, or the amount of regression testing you have to do, or the pull requests are not being reviewed, or like developers are like offloading work to QAs, and the lead time for the releasing is like weeks and months and something like that, because the process of working is so bad that very little can be done, and that requires you to rethink in many cases. Okay, so how do you actually structure your release process? How do you actually do your testing and quality assurance and so forth, and what practices are you applying within the team in order to ship as fast as possible? A lot of teams don't even consider these sorts of things. So a 10xer will go in and see that, yeah, alright, we have a systematic problem, not just maybe with the code, but with the way we actually run the team itself, and will introduce these sorts of suggestions that might actually make things flow much faster. So a true 10xer, the way that they usually elevate a team, has less to do with them themselves just coding faster than everybody else. They can absolutely do that if they're very good, but overall it has to do with the overall efficiency that they create for the entire team. Can they make other software developers more productive as a result of their presence? One thing that I think is really nice, if you have a knack for something like helping out with stuff like that, is to, as I was saying, you can make an abstraction, but you can also create code examples, or like reference code, as I like to call it. A classic one, this is a practice that I try to follow whenever I start working in a new team, especially if I'm supposed to like be the senior or the person who helps out with all this sort of stuff, right? So the first thing I usually do is apart from, you've heard me say, doing the code inventory, right? That's the first thing, to do the inventory and sort of figure out where everything is, right? But the second thing is to take a look at, right, where are the issue areas that we need to sort of fix, and then actually create. I might not have a good idea for how to create a really streamlined, super optimized abstraction at that point, but I can create example implementations of how to do something, like a style of working, so that people have that as a reference. It's a little bit like establishing good practices, but not through just documenting it, but by actually writing some features or working on a few features and using the style of working that that should probably be applied just as a default. And that gives you some type of reference, because a lot of software developers, especially when you're not 100% familiar with the system, will go and try to find examples of how to do things. And that's something you can do as well if you want to be a 10xer. Not just think about the most clever solution to a given problem, but to actually just structure the code and create good templates for how to solve the various problems that you might want to solve within the system, so that when a coworker comes and tries to figure out how should I write this class, or how should I implement this feature, or how should I do this thing, you can just say, well, it's actually very similar to that thing I did over there. So if you go and use that as reference, you could probably get some inspiration, because now it might not be exactly like, it might not be a generic solution that they can just plug and play, but it will perhaps inspire them to come up with the solution to their problem faster. It's a bit like Stack Overflow in a sense, right? You don't really know exactly how to go about solving something, so you Google around or Stack Overflow, and all of a sudden you find this thread where someone shows you an example of how they solved the problem that seemed similar, and that gives you inspiration. That's the thing that usually happens when you have a true 10xer in your team. So what I want you to take away from this is that 10x software developers, well, at least from what I can see, how they usually elevate their team is, as I said, like some of them are like super talented and they just work faster, and they can absolutely be like that. But usually the real 10xers are the sort of people who either have domain knowledge, they unblock other people, or they come up with solutions that simplify the work, or like they know and figure out how to structure abstractions so that you can reuse code or things like that. It's basically about making more people than themselves efficient, because like some problems requires absolutely a 10x, and I have worked on projects like that, guys, where it doesn't matter how many people you throw at this problem, because the solution that they will come up with will actually not be an optimal solution. And that means that you need someone who is truly talented to solve it in such a way that it simplifies but it comes back to the same thing. Even if they're a genius, the solution has to at least be simple enough that us other people can comprehend it, and that is the essence of what I'm talking about. Creating a super sophisticated solution to a problem may not help, or may not, in my opinion, make you a 10xer, unless it's a feature that basically now makes it redundant to work on it and it's just going to stay the same way forever. That could be nice, but usually it comes down to simplifying complicated problems or streamlining work processes for more people than yourself. That is the true 10xers, and it's very difficult to do this. It's the philosophers who are trying to do this usually and get good at it, and if you keep on trying and you keep being humble, you're going to fuck up a lot and try on your path trying to figure out how to do things in a more streamlined fashion. But sooner or later, you're hopefully going to notice what actually makes a difference in terms of productivity and stability to the system. And as I said, it doesn't just have to be code. It can be you just wrote a really nice module or a really nice unit test or something that gives someone else inspiration. Or it could have been that you figured out that actually if the unit tests that you write, or like the way that you do the releases, if you used feature flagging or some other thing that you could use, you can release faster. That optimization is the thing that you're looking for. And after a little while, you're going to start to figure out what things are just your ideas that really are just cool ideas that may not actually yield better results, and what things are actually creating more productivity among the people that you work with. Because as I've said before, guys, the curse of being a genius or a guru or something like that is that maybe very few people will understand your very sophisticated solutions. So your task or your challenge is to figure out How can you take that awesome, cool idea that you have and create an implementation or a solution that can scale to more people than yourself? That is how a 10x developer usually thinks. Have a great day.